This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And first item on the agenda is public comments. Floor is open for public comments. If anyone from the public would like to speak up, now's the time. All right. Hearing none, we're going to move on to the next item of the agenda, which is approving the minutes from the June 29th meeting. Would anyone like to move resolution number 1 to approve the minutes?
I'll move.
And who is that?
Sorry, it was John Viglione.
Thank you, John. Do I have a second?
It's Lonnie. I'll second.
Thank you, Lonnie. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions?
This is Shubhita. I'll abstain.
Thank you, Shubhita. Any others? Okay, motion passes. Moving right along here, we're going to now move on to agenda item number 4, healthy housing, which means a lot to me. Healthy housing to me is defined as a pest-free home, a home that's dry, a home that's well ventilated, cool in the summer and heated in the winter. And healthy housing promotes good physical and mental health. And I believe we can all get behind that. So I'm also interested in learning more about what you all think of healthy housing. And perhaps as a subcommittee, we can define what that is. So I'd like to now open it up for folks to, discuss why it's important to consider healthy housing and what we know about it now. And perhaps in the next meeting, we can dive into other relevant topics, but let's continue to keep the discussion around healthy housing going. Would anyone else? Go ahead.
This is Brian, and just to your last point there, Brenda, as chair, you're bringing this healthy housing issue, which is very important, and I suspect that it's important to all the board members and all the staff as well. So we want to have an open conversation here, a brainstorm, if you will. And to your point, we would like to have this be a recurring agenda item so that it continues to be of priority to the joint committee. So, again, just an open field here as Brenda's laid out. Let's just kind of throw ideas, thoughts out there. And then what we're going to do is have the teams talk about the CLNM programs from the perspective of income eligible and affordable housing. We'll have some of the staff talk about the Inflation Reduction Act opportunities that are out there from tax credits to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And again, the goal is to really get folks really excited about everything that's there, that's in place, but we need to move and help people residing in healthy housing or housing.
Thank you for that, Brian. And I just want to make it clear too that affordable housing doesn't always mean healthy. So that's the emphasis on, ensuring that we're not talking about just 4 walls and a roof, that we're really talking about what goes into making your home healthy and affordable. So thank you for that. All right, so let's move on to the next agenda item.
All right, so we had, again, to just kind of get the juices flowing. Ron, thank you for putting the slide together. So this is just kind of an overview of CLNM programs in this area of healthy housing. So we'll turn it over to Ron, and feel free, gang, to stop Ron, ask questions. This is really to dig deeper and move, as Brenda's saying, move beyond affordable and think healthy. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And what I put together here was what I was hoping would be germane to the subject. And what you'll see in the box on the left, the HES income eligible, that's our weatherization program that we presently offer to income qualified customers. And the nice thing about this that I think it relates to the healthy homes is that it's part of an assessment or an audit, if you will. And as part of that, there is also a health and safety check that is done beforehand to make sure that it's safe to go ahead and actually tighten up that home. Now, it does not investigate every health and safety aspect that could be wrong with the home, but it does take a look at those that would potentially, should the house be air sealed and insulated, potentially cause a problem. And so therefore what we do is the vendor is required to pause what they're doing. And now there is, through the work of the Energy Efficiency Board and DEEP, there is actually funding that can be utilized to remediate some of these health and safety barriers, so that way the vendor can go back in and perform their work. And I highlighted some of the activities. I won't go through it in detail, just given, trying to keep this brief, but certainly can answer any questions. That you'll see that there are rebates and incentives listed below, and those rebates and incentives are available to any income eligible customer. And the incentive really it varies depending upon the energy savings associated with that measure, but many of these measures might be available at little or no cost to the customer, such as insulation, heat pump water heaters from a water heating perspective, and appliances. And then on the right hand side, just given the fact that healthy housing, it also goes beyond income eligible customers, is one of the things that what we're trying to do from a decarbonization standpoint is we are making a proposal. We have made a proposal to DEEP to actually increase our heat pump incentives, and I thought this was a good opportunity to make this committee aware of our efforts in that area as we move forward trying to decarbonize. So
Ron,
let me
I have
pause.
a question for you.
I'm sorry?
I have a quick question for you, Ron. Can you just
Sure.
define what $250 per ton means for, just the average everyday person?
Sure. No, fair point. What we do is we take a look at the size of the heat pump, and the size of the heat pump is measured in tons, and typically what you'll see is somewhere in the neighborhood of around 2 tons, just to use a round number, is what you might see for a home. I mean, certainly some homes may have closer to 4 tons of cooling that would be there, but we do see many homes with about 2.5 tons worth of heating. So you would be seeing somewhere in the neighborhood of around on the instant discount around $500 a home, and you would see something around $2,000 per home in that neighborhood from a rebate perspective if you're looking at a air source heat pump. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And then I have another question. So what would the cost of install be? So that 500 discount minus or taken away from $8,000 or?
Yeah, I mean, the costs do vary. We ran a heat pump pilot where we were installing heat pumps to displace fuel oil and propane, and we saw the cost typically in the range of between $18,000 and $24,000 per home. So so it can be a fairly expensive proposition. But having said that, we have seen ductless heat pump systems get installed in the range of around $7,000 to $9,000 per home. So there is variability depending upon the configuration of the home as well as the heat load of the home.
Gotcha. Thank you for that.
And Ron, on the two incentives here, the equipment discount and the rebate, can both of those be done? Like, is this a contractor to
Yep.
manufacturer on the equipment and then the customer to the contractor on the rebate?
Yep, good question, Brian. And for clarification, there's an equipment discount, and that's an instant discount that's applied at the point of purchase. And this equipment is typically purchased by contractors, and so this discount is automatically applied at the point of purchase. And the idea behind this is we're trying to have an incentive structure that incentives the stocking of the high efficiency qualified heat pumps. So this instant discount gets to that effort, but also we want to make sure that we have a customer facing rebate, which you see under the fuel optimization rebates. That's actually either a rebate form that they could mail in, or they can fill it out online and submit it, and the customer could get the rebate for that. So the two go in tandem and they can be combined, but the idea is to make sure that we're motivating the customer, but also making sure that when the customer goes looking for qualified equipment, the distributors also have it in stock.
Perfect. And they get the right one with the right Energy Star, whatever the parameters.
Yeah, we actually started this methodology in Connecticut a few years ago, and we've actually seen Massachusetts has now started to adopt this process as well as a good best practice.
Cool. The other thing I'll just throw it out.
Excuse me, Ron.
Just a quick point, John.
Go ahead.
We're not going to dive into it, but is the Inflation Reduction Act and how the audit provisions in there and all the other rebates and incentives in there would stack up, to Brenda's point, to fill the gap. So between our state and the federal stuff, there's lots of good stuff there. And our teams obviously will want to sit down and work through those. But I just wanted to plant that seed as we're heading into that.
No, agreed. And one of the things that, we maintain a qualified products list for qualifying heat pumps. And one of the things that we're ensuring is that that list lines up with what is being required by Energy Star and CEE, which is essentially what the tax structure is going to be using for qualified equipment. So it will all be aligned, and that will also be very helpful from a motivation standpoint once you start stacking those tax incentives on top of this.
Yeah, Brian, that was going to be my exact point. I was going to mention about the High Efficiency Electric Home Rebate Act, which is part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And I was just wondering how that either stacked, complemented, or supplemented what you're speaking to, Ron. So it sounds to me like everything under the High Efficiency Electric Home Rebate Act would be supplementary to what you're discussing.
Correct. And the other nice thing about that, I believe that was Bert that was speaking, is that we're also doing this in conjunction with our associates in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. So it's a nice regional approach. So everyone's rowing in the same direction, and that should help us as a market force as well.
Perfect. And to just quickly point out, there are some low income household boosters in that Inflation Reduction Act, for those rebates, which can be quite substantial. I think up to $14,000. So there's a serious amount of money that's there, and I think it's incumbent upon us to figure out how to kind of translate all of those rebates and possibilities into something that the average everyday homeowner can understand and act on.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is definitely going to be the need for some good educational materials here that can be available to the customer, and being able to explain how do you take advantage of not only what we're offering through the energy efficiency programs, but combine that and take advantage of the available tax incentives that are out there.
It might be
Thank you.
your line of questions, Brenda. It might be that we try to have maybe 3 to 5 use cases to look at the economics. To your point of, here's an older home, here's a newer home. One home has existing health and safety issues, one doesn't. Here's a multifamily affordable housing unit. Maybe we have 3 to 5 different use cases where we could try to match up the eligible or the incentives that we have in Connecticut with the potential federal stuff to start looking at what that gap is. That's probably what you were getting at, Brenda, was like, just tell me the bottom line economics of how much I'm going to need to spend.
Yes, and at the end of that, the use cases, we should maybe work on developing a roadmap so that folks can go to, not just the Energize CT website, but perhaps even other partner websites, so that they can understand what benefits are available to them based on what their particular issues are. Because I think that that's another barrier to adoption is not knowing where to start. Sounds like somebody had a typing machine going on in the background.
I'm not sure what that is. To that point, Brenda, this is Richard Fazy. Good to hear your voice. So the EEB consultants and Deep and the companies will all be working on thinking through the best strategies to make it easy and the easy for customers, reduce the number of places they have to go, sort of moving towards one-stop shop, taking advantage of the existing and the new opportunities. We've got a lot of planning to do around this, but I think that the goal is certainly to leverage those, the upcoming opportunities, make it as easy as possible for customers and contractors to deliver them to Connecticut ratepayers. So that's certainly on the table coming up in the near future.
That's excellent. I appreciate that.
And I just want to add one more thing to the list here, sort of in line with the focus on healthy housing. We do also have on the list for upcoming work to take a look at energy and heat recovery ventilation systems and the role that they could play in these programs. There's some evaluation work that's underway to see is there an opportunity to tighten up buildings more, and is the energy savings worth putting towards installing a mechanical ventilation system as well too. So healthy indoor air is certainly a priority, and I know it is, and some of our newer board members have asked us to look into this. So that's something that's not on the list currently, but it is something we'll be looking at as well.
Thank you, Richard. Anyone else from the Green Bank want to provide some?
Just a general comment, and I think we share this with Deep and Shubhita and the team, is that like right now is really our moment, meaning the Inflation Reduction Act has an incredible amount of incentives on the efficiency, renewable energy, and other sides, resilience, that to the point of that you're making, Brenda, making it easy in the roadmap. If we can't figure this out, by 2030, we need to be maximizing deployment of these federal funds to get our penetration rates to really significant and substantial levels. So I think we're all really excited and motivated by what we see in the IRA. The challenge for us is going to be making everything work as seamlessly and simply as possible for the customer. Judge wanted to make that broad point.
2 follow-up questions. The first would be, and we don't have to solve for this right now, but what would it look like if we as a subcommittee were to come up with a definition for healthy housing? And the second is who's willing to take the lead on an IRA workshop to break this down for everybody. And maybe perhaps on Energy Efficiency Day, which is coming up in a couple weeks, would be a great topic for a workshop. Just putting it out there for the Deep and Green Bank folks to think about in collaboration with the utility companies.
Well, why don't we jump a little bit there, which is to say we'll keep this moving a little bit to the next slide. And the next slide is to really, again, kind of continue to wet our whistles on what's in actually, it's the slide after this one, forgive me. This one is a little bit more on Connecticut policies that we have in place. And the first one has to do with behind the meter renewables. The second one has to do with the shared clean energy facilities on subscriber savings. And then the third one is on resilience with energy storage. So let us do the Connecticut one first, and then we're going to jump back into the Inflation Reduction Act a bit and have fun there. Mackie, are you on?
Yep, I'm here, Brian.
Perfect. You want to cover the RRES?
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. Mackie Dykes with the Green Bank. So just, I'll do this, try to keep this short. So at a high level, RRES, the Residential Renewable Energy Solutions Program, is the successor solar program to the former program run by the Green Bank, RSIP. It's for, as the name implies, for residential properties, which were defined previously as 1 to 4 unit. Thanks to law passed 2 legislative sessions ago, affordable multifamily housing became eligible for the RRES program. Prior to that, it was in the non-residential renewable energy solutions, which had, I guess, being an RRES is better for 2 reasons for these properties. The incentive is higher, and there is no cap on the amount of projects that can be done. In the non-residential, there's a competition for a limited number of incentives, and they are in almost every case less than what's available in RRES. So recognizing that these projects and affordable multifamily properties are oftentimes more challenging and in need of that extra incentive, the projects were moved over to RRES. And in addition, there was a requirement that a portion of the benefits have to be shared with the tenant. So we're going to incentivize these projects at a higher level, but we're going to make sure that some of that benefit reaches the tenants. So it makes, going back to the definition of healthy housing, it should make the property itself more affordable for the tenants because it's reducing their energy costs and it's giving them greener power. There's a group right now, which Deep and the Connecticut Green Bank are a part of, to figure out exactly what that, to recommend to PURA what that sharing of benefits should be. We plan on filing that recommendation by the end of the month. All the other elements to the program, or to affordable multifamily participation, are almost in place. There's draft rules filed with PURA by the EDCs, and PURA has set a deadline of having everything in place by January 1st. So everything's coming together, and the Green Bank's excited about the opportunity here and being able to bring on-site solar to a lot of these properties.
Excellent. Thank you, Mackie. So let me continue with SCEF and the energy storage solutions, and then we'll stop for a second because then we'll have efficiency a little bit and a little bit on renewables on in-state stuff. So shared clean energy facilities, and I'm going to go into more detail providing an update to the joint committee at the tail end of this meeting as a follow-up from the last meeting that we had. But in general, if you can't cite renewable energy on your building or at your home, and you are low income, moderate income, you can try to receive a subscriber savings into what is, you all might recall, Isabel Hazelwood did an excellent job from Eversource presenting this process. So if you're interested in receiving a 2.5 cent per kilowatt hour for 20-year subscriber savings by participating in SCEF, and you're selected through this lottery to receive that, then that's about $210, maybe $250 per home per year over a 20-year period. So, you know, if you stack all those up over a 20-year period and you look at the present value of that, that can be a significant amount of value to participants. But this is the case where it's not cited on site or behind the meter, but you want to participate in clean energy and you win the lottery. We'll come back to that in more detail later. Energy Storage Solutions is the behind the meter battery storage incentive program that's co-administered by the Green Bank, Eversource, and United Illuminating. Chair Gillette was very adamant about the importance of making sure that the behind the meter systems serve no less than 40% of the residential participants in low income communities, of which our expectation is that those tenants residing in affordable housing would also be considered within this no less than 40% target. But as a result, there are two incentive levels for underserved communities, which are defined by DECD. I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with that annual designation of the DECD determined municipalities, or low income families, less than 60%. I believe it's AMI, not SMI, but we'll double check on that. So if you fall in those categories, then you can receive an upfront incentive of $300 to $400 per kilowatt hour. And Brenda, just to give you a sense, you know, an average battery storage system might be 14 kilowatt hours. So, you know, $300, $400 times, you know, 14 kilowatt hours would give you the upfront incentive. The installed cost could be, you know, $15,000 for those systems. So in this case, the upfront incentive would provide up to $7,500. So it's likely that these low to moderate income residents would receive up to the maximum of the incentive, which is great. We're going to get into the federal ITC, which then gives a lot more to fill a lot more of that gap and potentially all of the gap. But this was designed to really help low income. And then there is an ongoing performance-based incentive that the EDCs are administering to actively dispatch those batteries to reduce peak load when there are events of peak demand on our system. So on average over a season, a participant can get $200 per kilowatt for years 1 through 5 of the program. There'll be a winter incentive as well to reduce winter peak. And then in the second 5 years, years 6 through 10, that active dispatch number comes down. So collectively together, when you put the upfront and the ongoing performance-based incentive together, that can pay for a significant proportion of the overall installed cost of that battery storage system. So you're talking about we're looking at ones on the participant cost test. So you know, paybacks on a present value basis through these incentives, not including the federal investment tax credits. So again, designed to hit low income. We're not seeing low income penetration yet because we still think the installer community that's out there aren't focused on low income. We're going to be changing that by ramping up an installer in the residential solar market that was very focused on that into the energy storage market, lifting that market, because if the market isn't going to do it, we're going to find ways to make the market do it because it's that important. So those are 3 kind of renewable energy incentives. And why don't we stop there and just on the internal state mechanisms, we've got the efficiency that Ron talked about, and then the renewable energy that Mackie and I talked about. Happy to take any questions before or comments before we go to the federal stuff.
No questions or comments from me, but I'm really happy to hear what I'm hearing. This is all good stuff for people who are struggling with energy burden and energy poverty. I'm really excited about what the next 5 to 10 years are going to look like.
Well, let's go there, because between the combination of where we were as a state with the things that we've got in place to now, a month ago, the Inflation Reduction Act being signed into law, we should all be giddy about what's in there, because Connecticut is well positioned to take full advantage of those incentives along with what we're providing to make sure that we're maximizing all that value back to our most vulnerable. So I'll take a stab. Feel free, Mackie, Bert, others, Ron, Steve, Larry, to jump in here, but I'll just take a high level stab at these. And we're all still trying to dig into this. This is all still new to many of us, but our goal is to dig into it and try to think about how it applies to the market segment, single family, multifamily, the incentive programs that we offer, the financing programs that we offer, to try to figure out how we can make this simple. So the first one is the
Brian, before you jump into it, I just wanted to quickly say that when we were at the peak of COVID and folks were going to be receiving a stimulus because they were out of work, there was a lot of promotion of that, and people were, everyday people were into it. They understood it. And I think that the IRA is so significant. I mean, it's one of those, you're right, we should all be giddy, but we can only be giddy if we understand it and if there's promotion around it. So I'm hoping that we can all think about ways in which we can set up a series of webinars or even in-person workshops to get the word out about this very significant legislation. So sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just as excited as you are.
Yeah, no, that's totally right. Like if in 2030, 2032, it tends to be the deadlines on all these federal policies. If in 2033 we look back and we haven't had significant penetration across all of our sectors, then we have all fundamentally failed. Like the opportunities are so big that if we're not figuring it out amongst us, then we should be looking in the mirror and being like, come on, guys, like the time is now and let's get going. So the first is this investment tax credit extended to at 30%. I don't know what it was before, but this is kind of like the ITC for efficiency, it feels like to me, through 2032. It has an annual cap of $1,200. So apparently, again, we're going to get more information on each of these. Apparently, you can access this every year up to $1,200, except for heat pumps at $2,000 in aggregate. So it's allowing for up to $2,000 for heat pumps. So what does this mean in the context of efficiency? Richard, Stacy, maybe you all have a purview, or Ron, Steve, Larry on this, but this feels like a really exciting opportunity. Every year you can get a tax credit up to $1,200 for these measures. Then you got the homes program, which is really driven by the energy savings that are delivered as a result of energy improvements. So you can see here, energy savings delivered between 20 to 35% would be $2,000 per unit, and a maximum for multi-unit housing of $200,000 per building. So if we're looking at multi-unit dwellings in this case, obviously we'd want to deliver energy savings greater than 35%, so we can get $4,000 per unit. I mean, imagine that, $4,000 per unit up to $400,000 per building. Those are real cash flows into these projects. So that's the homes program. And I think this program drives the 4.3 billion, and Shubhita, you I'm sure in this, it drives that money down to the states, so the state energy offices. So I think there must be some sort of formula allocation that goes to the states with this 4.3 billion. And then similarly on the high efficiency electric home rebate program, there's federal money, 4.3 billion roughly, nearly, that's going to go to state energy offices and Indian tribes to do rebate programs for all the things that we care about, right? So we just heard from Ron on the dollars per ton. Here's some rebate levels, and there are tables, $1,750 for heat pump water heaters, $1,600 for insulation, wiring, lots of different things going on here. Let me pause here because I'm sure my efficiency colleagues have things to weigh in here, because this is really cool stuff.
Just a point, Brian, because you asked about the alignment of the heat pump standards, and the IRA specifically calls out CEE standards, which is aligning with Energy Star, and it's in the same line with the qualifying heat pumps and the programs currently. So these things are converging, and so we'll see that, and the neat cold climate standards as well too. So while they're not all exactly the same, they're approximately the same, and over the course of the near future, I would suggest that we'll probably be seeing them lining up with some consistent standards there. I just want to make a point too that to Brenda's point earlier about workshops and sort of socializing, getting the word out. There's some timing issues on these. While the tax credits will be available January 1st of 2023, so that's coming right up. My understanding is the other programs still have to have the rules written and states to apply, and so DOE and EPA as the jurisdiction of some of the other funds in this still yet have to be determined, and so those are going to be. What I've heard is that those funds probably won't flow to the states for another year or more, maybe a year and a half. But the tax credits are coming up. There's also a new construction tax credit too that they extended to 45L. But the other ones, we have a little bit of time. I mean, that's not to say that we should twiddle our thumbs, but there will be some time to make sure we get it right, to make sure the messaging's right, that we coordinate and figure out how all these work together, and then get the word out to customers. So there is a timeline consideration we want to think about in all this too.
Cool. And Richard, are those DOE programs? Will the RFIs come through, the request for informations come through DOE, or what agency?
Yeah, well, so DEEP will be really leading the charge here. And maybe, I don't know if Kate, you wanted to say anything. We had our first meeting of many this morning in planning this with DEEP and the board.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. To your point, there's still a lot that we are waiting to find out about these funding opportunities, and that will of course come from federal guidance. The programs that are the two grant programs that are outlined on this slide are run through state energy offices, and so DEEP is paying very close attention to the opportunities that are there and are preparing to respond to some of those RFIs when they happen. But even though there are a lot of unknowns, the bill still gives us a lot to consider right now. So, as Richard mentioned, we had a pretty lengthy discussion this morning about some of the issues that this group has already raised. For example, what strategies can we be implementing to make this a really streamlined and simple experience for customers? We've been talking a lot about aligning eligibility requirements. So I'm not sure if it's outlined on this slide, but I believe both the homes and the high efficiency electric home rebate program have a moderate income tranche that is customers that are 80 to 150%, or I apologize, that are 80 to 150% of the area median income, and then they have a low income tranche that's below 80. Obviously, that's a little bit different than the income qualification thresholds that we use for the Energize CT programs. So, we're preparing for a lot of this guidance, and I think that will be very instructive for us to figure out exactly how we're going to structure these programs. But in the meantime, there are a lot of key considerations that we can be working through. And I think we'll be relying pretty heavily on public input to inform a lot of this. The Energy Efficiency Board has discussed the IRA a couple of times in their meetings, but I did just want to flag for this group that DEEP and the EEB are planning to hold a joint public input session on IRA opportunities in November. We would love for Green Bay folks in this committee to be a part of that. So we'll be sure to share all of that information, and I think it will be really informative for all of us to bring those stakeholders together.
That's great, Kate. Thank you. Thank you for that update. Other comments on this line?
So Michael Yule had a question in the chat. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask now or wait for public comment.
Let's go ahead and tackle it.
All right. So he wants to know what are the new standards utilizing the AHRI 2017 or 2023 ratings?
Richard, there you go. CEE standards.
So the IRA specifically references the Consortium for Energy Efficiency, or CEE, standards. The highest standard that's not the advanced standard. And my understanding is that CEE has been collaborating, working with EPA to move the heat pump standards to the HSPF 2 and SEER 2 standards. I'm not sure the timing of that, but I'm assuming that's not the old standards, but the new one. So that's not an exact, it's not an exact answer, Mike, but that's my understanding. And it's still, I think these are still somewhat in flux, but moving towards, there's specifically reference to CEE, and maybe it looks like Ron may have another answer as well.
I was just actually going to confirm what you were saying, Richard. I mean, starting January 1, we're planning on using the 2023 HSPF 2 and SEER 2 rating, so which is, I believe, what you just said. So I just wanted to confirm that.
Great, thank you.
Cool. Others? Okay, we're going to move to renewables now. So we'll continue. Let's continue this thread. Now we're on the federal. So on the investment tax credit side for solar and storage, I mean, in our space, it was really, really exciting as well. The investment tax credit gets increased from 26%. It was slated to be eliminated. So it was going to go from 26 to 22%, 22% to 0%, 10% for some commercial customers, but it went up to 30% through 2032. And that also includes for standalone battery storage. So a lot of us in the energy storage solutions have been modeling the ITC, assuming that on the residential side, right now 100% of the battery storage installations are paired with solar. So they would be able to access the ITC. In this context, there could be homeowners that just want to do storage. I'm not sure of what the value proposition would be there, but they could take advantage of the ITC. What's really cool is that you really get to see the administration's values and priorities by the adders that come onto the investment tax credit. So you can get a participant can get up to a maximum of 50% on the investment tax credit with several adders. So if you're a low-income property, you can get an additional 10%. If you reside in an energy community, for example, a community that was the site of a former coal-fired power plant, like Bridgeport, for example, you can get an additional 10%. If you're using domestic content in your materials, you get additional 10%. So this is cool because you're seeing President Biden's values put right on the line here to try to encourage market developers to serve customers by providing up to a 50% investment tax credit. So when you see that in the context of the RRES, as Mackie has laid out, this is really a huge opportunity to, your point, Brenda, reduce energy burden by going with on-site renewables, and to the extent we could ensure that batteries are alongside those solar PV systems, then we could also see an increase in energy security by making sure that the lights stay on when the power is out on the grid. So we're really excited about this provision in the renewable energy space. And these are just a snippet. I feel like I fell in the trap like I did Bert Mackey the last time. We, as a staff, literally the day after the Senate signed the bill and we knew this was going to become law, we had a staff meeting and everyone was so excited by all this stuff we've been talking about that we forgot the $27 billion for the National Climate Bank that was in the bill. And I missed it again in this context. But there is another line item in the bill called the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund that includes 3 separate sources of funds. One is $7 billion for zero emission technologies. We call this the Senator Bernie Sanders part of the bill. Senator Sanders' team actually reached out to us about a year and a half ago to learn about the RCIP and why it was successful reaching low to moderate income families. And this part of the bill is to provide grants, loans, any source of funding to local, state, tribal governments and other eligible entities. So the EPA is administering the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, so they will be developing a process for that competition. So, working with DEEP and others, obviously we'll be working to go after those funds specifically for our vulnerable communities here in Connecticut. The other $20 billion is split into two pools. There's an $8 billion pool, which is the 40% Justice 40 pool. So that is for low income and disadvantaged communities. And then the remaining $12 billion is for everything else. And that is expected to go to a single eligible entity, which would be a national climate bank that would provide capital to groups like us, the Connecticut Green Bank. This whole thing was modeled after Connecticut. I'm not going to go into the history of it, but we were created in Connecticut back in 2011 based on a failed federal policy in 2009, and now it has finally succeeded. So we're excited by that $27 billion in trying to do what we've done, which is to turn the $27 billion into 5 to 10 times more investment while lifting up vulnerable communities in this market that we're trying to create. So lots of stuff from the IRA. Why don't I stop there? General comments, directions on the state and federal incentives before us. If you're not feeling it, like we should really, by 2032, we should have significant penetration in Connecticut.
I love it. Go ahead.
The only thing I was going to add is, sorry, Kate, go ahead.
Maybe we're going to say the same thing, Richard, which is that, in addition to some of the funds that are going to other kinds of agencies, there is a $1 billion allocation to HUD for improving energy efficiency, water efficiency, and climate resilience and affordable housing. And to the earlier point about healthy homes, I believe that indoor air quality improvements are one of the eligible uses for these funds. So the eligible recipients of these are managers of affordable housing. So it doesn't flow through the state energy offices like some of the other opportunities, but just to note that it's obviously going to behoove us to work with some of our other agencies on this.
I was going to say something else, so thanks for adding that. I was just going to note that on the greenhouse gas reduction fund, my understanding is that EPA is administering this fund, whereas DOE is administering much of the other funds, and they've got a much shorter. They have a legislative time frame to get the rules written, and so Brian, for you and your team, you may just want to offer to lend a hand to EPA in putting those together, because my understanding is that they are needing to do that, and they're I don't know, they're not necessarily starting from scratch. They certainly have some ideas, but the details and how those work out could benefit from hearing your on the ground experience and suggestions, and ensuring that Connecticut is a recipient of some of those funds as they develop those rules for rolling the funds out.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Richard. Totally agree with you. Bert, myself, and another staff member will be in DC next week for the Green Bank Summit, which is where this is. We're trying to build a big green tent of local, state, and community development financial institutions to submit this one application to the EPA. To your point, there's a 180-day timeline on getting these rules set by the EPA, and that was done. We've been integrally involved in this legislation. That was done to get things moving. We don't want to be in another presidential cycle. We want the money out the door and in the hands of states and CDFIs so that we can get this investment moving and not be tied up in politics. So yeah, everyone's going to be working hard over the next 3 to 6 months, right, Bert? This is like our
that's for sure. We've been working hard over the last several weeks with this big push ahead. I just want to just add on that there's the $369 billion as part of this climate aspect of this bill. So it's a lot of good incentives here, and I think that one of the most important things is, as with respect to the tax credit, is for a 10-year period it finally gives some good solid visibility and support to the market. Previously, these credits were going to be falling off over the next couple of years, And so it was, whenever that happens, there's always a big push to get things done. And then if nothing comes in its place in the market, then decelerates. So it's good to see this carrying on for another 10 years and giving support to the market.
Hey, Bert, anything you want to say in terms of the structure of these ITCs as well, in terms of not just being so tax equity focused, but other mechanisms to help?
Yeah, that's another excellent aspect of what was done here. I think there were a number of advocates to try to, well, in solar transactions generally, the sponsors of the transactions cannot take full advantage of the investment tax credit themselves. Most companies cannot. So for these larger transactions, there are special tax equity investors that utilize the tax benefits and then pass along some of those benefits into the structures, whether it's a power purchase agreement or a solar lease. But under the new law, there are two key changes. One is called direct pay, where nonprofits, and that would include the Green Bank, can avail themselves of getting directly paid for what the investment tax credit would be. So that's a good benefit there. So which previously was not available to us. And the other aspect is for for-profit entities who take up solar. They can transfer these tax credits to other parties that can use them. So it's called the transferability aspect of the bill. So these in addition to the existing use of tax equity, which a number of market watchers are saying tax equity will lose its iron grip on this market, much to the benefit of competition. And I would suspect, smaller projects will benefit most assuredly from this flexibility.
And what that means broadly is that tax equity as part of capital structures to finance solar is expensive. And in the context now of these changes, it's creating more competition, as Bert just alluded to, which ultimately means that the cost of capital will come down, which ultimately means that the energy savings will inure more to the beneficiaries, the hosts of the project. So all of that is good policy. And given our climate in Connecticut for direct payment on tariffs and all these sorts of things, we've got all the right things in place. We just now have to put all these puzzle pieces together to work for the customer. Any other comments, questions? So we're going to tackle healthy homes at every quarterly meeting. We'll start to flesh out. We'll work with the chair, Brenda, on fleshing out kind of the parts and the pieces every quarter that we want to further build out, and then our teams, Steve, Ron, Larry, and Mackie, and the Green Bank team will prepare accordingly.
It's excellent. Thank you, Brian, and everyone else for their contributions. I think we, in the interest of time, need to move on to the next agenda item, and that is Stacy Sherwood presenting on the Cnlm plan.
Actually, Stacy had to go to another meeting, so if it's okay, Brenda,
Yes.
she asked me if I could step in for her.
Thank you, Richard. I apologize.
Nope, not a problem. So just have 4 or 5 slides providing an update of where the Energy Efficiency Board is. So we have a new vice chair, Amy McLean stepped down from the board last month, and so there is an opening in her. She leaves a big hole there, as Brenda, you and others know, both as the vice chair of the board and also as the chair of the residential committee. So the board will be voting on a new vice chair at October's meeting, coming up on October 12th. As well, there are currently 2 vacancies on the board, and Deep is working through the process to fill those. At the October meeting as well, too, there will be a residential representative that hopefully will be named at that at that board meeting. And with Amy's stepping down, she represented the environmental legislative seat there, and so DEEP is in the process of opening up an application process to solicit people, organizations that are interested in filling that seat on the Energy Efficiency Board. As well, too, we've just come through a rebid process for both the technical consultants and the evaluation administrators to the board. So that process was the decision by the board was announced last week, and we're certainly happy to say that the Energy Futures Group team was selected again to provide the role of technical consultants, and the SCUMAT's existing evaluation administrators were also selected to continue their role in the SCRA team as well. Next slide, unless there are any questions, chime in along the way. Okay, so we're also in the process of working through year plan update of our 3-year plan. The 3-year plan we're in right now started at the beginning of this year, and so we're working on the 2023 plan update. There are throughout the 3-year planning process, we've identified 3 plan priorities: energy affordability, decarbonization, and equity, and these are woven throughout the programs and the initiatives that we have, and we're working with the companies to deliver. So energy affordability, really looking at cost burdens and economic development. So decarbonization, as we're moving towards looking at reducing fossil fuel use and supporting lower carbon technologies as well too. This is really where a lot of the heat pump and heat pump water heater initiatives come from as well too. As part of this, we are looking forward to engaging in the DEEP comprehensive energy solutions or comprehensive energy strategy initiative too, to provide some guidance around directions we're heading with, and so working hand in hand with DEEP on where we're going as a state in terms of decarbonization. And last but not least, really moving equity into the forefront and as a common theme throughout all of our programs. We've the board had hired earlier this year a DEI consultant, and so they are currently reviewing all of our programs, the way that we look at our metrics, and we'll be coming back with some guidance for us to really weave equity throughout everything that we do as part of the conservation and load management programs. So just a snapshot in terms of where we are with the 2023 plan update. Some of the activities that and changes that are being proposed right now and put into the plan, which will be submitted November 1st to DEEP for their consideration and determination. So we are, as part of this, there were 25 conditional items that came out of the 3-year plan from DEEP, and so with a schedule throughout this year, the companies and the board are working on addressing each of those. At the same time, the residential and the commercial and industrial portfolios have been reviewed, some adjustments and enhancements to those that we're looking at along the way. Continue to make advancements with the education, workforce, and community outreach portfolio. Have underway, for instance, the mobile van that really has been I think quite successful, moving from a brick and mortar facility to one that can actually go throughout the state, and did share that at the board's planning meeting the other week as well too. Growing the active demand response programs as well. working right through. We're getting close. The Energy Efficiency Board will be voting on the planned budgets, the savings tables, all the screening that goes into that, and rolling in the evaluation efforts at the October meeting that's coming up to give the companies time to finalize the plan, update, and submit that to DEEP by November 1st. So, and as well too, the program savings document that that has all of the savings and the results of the evaluation is sort of the foundation of a lot of that work. So all of those have been going through a really huge effort to update everything and make sure we're aligned and have the best up-to-date values as part of the plan. Next, I think there are one or two left. I think there's a time frame. So we've been working through this plan update process. Where we are now, we're just in the process of finalizing. The consultants have been working closely to finalize the tables and the text. I mentioned the upcoming October 12th meeting at which the Efficiency Board will vote on the plan text, the savings tables, the budget, and then November 1st that will be filed by the companies to DEEP. And that might be it, unless anybody, okay, so, oh, the last slide we had, just as a reminder, we would look forward working with you as part of the last bullet on here as well too. So glad that Kate raised some of the work that we've already engaged in an IRA. It seems like coordinating between DEEP and the Energy Efficiency Board and the Green Bank on where we're going with IRA funding is certainly a great opportunity there. So we look forward to that. In addition to that too, it would be, maybe it's time and be interested to hear your feedback to take a step back and just asking the question, is the financing serving the needs of Connecticut customers, especially in light of where we're going with electrification, decarbonization efforts. As we weatherize our homes and put in new heat pump systems, do the products work? Are they the right ones? Or is there anything that's missing? So if there's an opportunity to sort of take a step back and put our heads together on that, we would certainly look forward to working with the Green Bank in that area. So I think that was all that I had. Is there another slide? I think that might have been it. But anything else that response, Brian, or anything else that Ron or anybody else from the companies or DEEP wants to add? Certainly.
I think my general comment will be here. Thank you, Richard, for that. On this question of evaluation and finance serving the needs of Connecticut customers is as we get into the next update in other business is just Steve, Ron, Larry, Mackie, any general response on that high level question, or how's the product doing? Does it need evaluation? Let's just bring that into that conversation.
Perfect.
All right, thank you, Richard and Brian. Moving on to other business now, we can get Mackie, Steve, Bruno, Ron, and Larry to provide an update on items A through C.
Who wants to lead on government?
Hey, Brian, I can give a quick update on the SBA Muni program, if that's okay.
Perfect. And then Mac, anything you want to add, please?
Okay. Mac, you good with that, or did you have something you want to say first?
Oh, no, go for it. Go for it,
Okay.
Steve.
Yeah, so basically the Green Bank and Eversource a while back had done the recap where we had sold loans that we used for small business and municipal customers. And so we had sold them back in 2018. And since then, the Energy Efficiency Fund would front the money and we would resell those on a quarterly basis. We had in 2022, for the first 6 months of the year, we generated $7.2 million in small business and muni loans. And that includes state projects as well. And then since program inception, $79 million in loans that have been resold, including original recap purchase. So I think that program is going really well. And Brian, at the very end, we could talk about other opportunities. But as far as the C&I financing, in particular, small business, state, and muni, the loan resale and purchase has been going well. I will say the interest rate inflation has kind of changed the rate. We were actually doing really well. I think, Mac, you're right. We were averaging rates of like in the 2% range in the first 3 years of the program, and now we're closer towards the 5% range. But hopefully, that changes back and repurposes over time. But the program is running really well.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned perhaps at the last meeting, we've been able to, in terms of loan eligibility, expand, thanks to the larger source of capital we've been able to expand the principal amounts that borrowers can take out, particularly on the state and muni side, as well as expand the terms that are available to borrowers, hopefully, allowing sort of longer payback measures. And Steve, this is the time to talk about the new eligible measures, or is that another part of the agenda?
I think Brian was thinking to talk about that at the very end to address the question that Richard had posed there.
Cool. Okay.
Thanks.
So it feels like, getting to Richard's question as it applies to SBEA in this context, and you'll cover it again in the next slide, is that from an impact perspective, this, interest rate 2 to 3%, given rising interest rates, we're looking at 5%. So the impact of the buy down might be 1, but it does sound like, 0% on bill, 4 years, 7 years, it's hard to get better than that. But having conversations with those who have taken advantage of the program, I think it's Steve, almost 7,000 small business customers, maybe more.
Yeah, correct.
And getting a sense from them, just planting the seed on how you might think about it. Richard, I don't know if there's other ways of thinking about it in the context of the small business energy advantage. All right, let's keep going. The small, medium business here.
I covered the Mac and I kind of covered the small section in there. I think the outlier still is the medium C&I customers that aren't part of the small business program. The companies Eversource and Avangrid had gone through an RFP process, and we put in place a third-party lender process. The uptake on that is still kind of in development right now, but nowhere near the activity, Brian and team, that we see with the small business program. So we're hoping that that with the new contract we have with the third-party lender, they have a portal. They did contractor training in the beginning of the year, where the contractors are able to log into a portal and put projects through. But so far, minimal uptake on that. We'll see as the program gets marketed over the year. And I know, Mac, you have CPACE as well. You want to comment on that a little bit in case that provides some solutions.
Yep. CPACE, SBEA serves a certain class of customer at a certain project amount on the commercial side up to 100,000. CPACE can really pick up from there. Projects really really no limit on project size as long as the energy savings are there. And provides very long-term fixed rate attractive financing for projects. So I do think it's an area to the earlier question, perhaps looking at the impact and options for customers in this space, the medium and large, could be worth a look to make sure we've got the right product mix, or if there is some gap, or just better coordination on delivering the existing products. I mean, a minimum, like I think CPACE integration with the portal.
Right. And back to Brian's point, it might be worthwhile to survey some customers and, do they need loans or not need loans? Are we trying to fill a niche that maybe isn't really needed? Do the medium large customers have their own ways of getting financing separate from the fund, or is it that the rates that we provide are not attractive enough for them? like the 0% rate that they get when they do the small business, muni, and state loans.
Anything here, Bert, that you want to say with regards to a rising interest rate environment and how we're thinking about our cost of debt, whether it's through capital solutions, whether it's through our programs, PPA, CPACE, anything you want to say about interest rates?
Brian, what I would say is we're working with our various partners in the market. For example, we have loans outstanding for funding assistance with one of the CDFIs, Capital for Change. Their current funding profile is that they're taking funds that are linked to the prime rate. The prime rate is linked to the federal funds rate, so that's certainly creating some stress, there. So we're looking at changing the rate perhaps to a fixed rate for ourselves, and we participate in that transaction with another financial institution, Amalgamated Bank, and they're considering what they can do as well. As far as for us, that's on the residential side, and we're also talking to our other lenders in the market that help out with as far as say the Smart E program is concerned. On the C&I side, we've looking at the cost of energy generally going up substantially over the past year, and looking for that to stay elevated. We've been trying to do what we can in the small, the lower ticket price area of CPACE, which we deem as $500,000 and below, to lower the interest rates for those projects. So where the federal government or the Federal Reserve has been increasing rates, we've actually stepped down our rates to try to assist these small businesses that are using CPACE to get more measures installed in their businesses and do that more affordably than they otherwise would do. We're not planning to increase those interest rates in CPACE for the foreseeable future because for the very reasons I said, the energy costs are going up. These small businesses are going to be challenged by those costs, and we want to do everything we can to incentivize those businesses to install measures that are going to save on energy expense. It is a little bit concerning on this small business energy advantage loans. We've got that is part of that is we're hoping that these increases will not be sustained but for too long, but it looks like from the Federal Reserve announcement today, which raised interest rates another 0.75%, that has raised the 2-year yield is now a little bit over 4%, and that is one of the benchmark rates that we use to set the purchase price for the tranches that Steve Bruno mentioned before. So we're hoping that the Fed's going to be successful in reducing inflation and inflationary pressures that will enable them to start at least moderating the pace of increase over the next couple of meetings that they have planned. So, but we're a little less able to deal with that phenomenon on our own, especially given that we're lending with another financial institution there.
Thanks, Bert. And anything else on SBEA, small business government? Otherwise, we'll shift to, I think we've got Madeline and Ralph on to cover Marty.
Yes, afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to give everyone an update here on Smarty. So as many of you are aware, we are still running with our summer special offer. And as a reminder, it's 2.99% for 5, 7, and 10 years, and it's covering heat pumps, electric vehicle charging, solar hot water heating, and battery storage up to $25,000. And as of Monday, we've now financed approximately 155 jobs for $3.293 million. That's cost approximately $375,000 in interest rate buy down funds. And with the remaining funds that we have, we expect another 50 to 100 projects to close under the offer before it wraps up. Almost all projects have been some form of heat pump, whether it's an air source or a ductless mini split. And we have had a handful of geothermal projects come through under the program at this point. With that said, as we move, sorry, was there?
Yes, I had a quick question. How does that compare to years past, the 155 projects?
It's right on kind of pace with what we've seen. We always see the spike. This year, I think it's been a little helpful that it's been a little warmer, so we've been seeing more air conditioning. This offer that we've had, it's hard to say right now until we close the offer. My expectation, though, would be that because of supply chain issues and costs going up, I would think we'll end up seeing a few less projects comparatively for the same amount of dollars, just because things have become more expensive over the last few years.
Thank you.
Ralph, in terms of our data collection, does this fall under the HVAC definition?
Yes. Yeah, all the heat pump is falling under HVAC.
Cool. Do we have the ability to step back and pull the heat pump versus the non-heat pump data?
For this special offer or all pro projects right now?
For all Smarties finance projects in the entire fleet. To get to
Yes.
Brenda's question, are we seeing more now versus the past? Can we disaggregate the data?
Yes, we can do that. I can put something together.
Brian, are you suggesting like tracking heat pumps, specifically like heat pump trends over time? Okay, yeah, we can do that very easily.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, let's do that for Brenda. We can just send that whenever we finish the analysis. Perfect, thank you.
No problem. Make a note here.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting for to see. So thank you for asking the question, Brenda.
You bet.
It would be great to, once we have that data, to smash it up against the rebate side of the question to see what % of projects have used Smarty loan financing. And then we can probably, in years where we didn't have the special offer versus now at 2.99%, see if there is an interest rate lift on demand.
Mm-hmm. One thing to just keep in mind is that Capital for Change, the heat loan does see a lot of volume for heat pumps as well. So that's not going to be like the whole story of what's happening in Connecticut. We'll have to get that data from them as well.
Are these homes also Posigen homes?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So in addition to our summer special offer, we're going to be scheduling regular check-ins with both Eversource and UI on their heat pump efforts and outreach, so that we can better align ourselves moving forward. So that's definitely a plan to move forward. We're looking to partner with Mia. We've already made contact with her, Eversource, and Sharon at UI. In addition to that, we are working with John Karzak at UI in order to define advanced duct sealing to potentially get that as an added measure within the Smarty umbrella. So we have a few things moving along. And that is what I have today for updates, and happy to answer any additional questions anyone has.
Cool. So a couple other points. Brenda, I'll ask the team to also take a look at the heat pumps to solar PV to see if solar PV company customers are uptaking heat pumps too, to see if there's a correlation there. I think through some of our work with Yale, they would expect to see a connection between those who are doing solar with heat pumps. So we'll take a look at that. Beyond Posigen, there are going to be other customers who have installed the systems, own it themselves, who see heat pumps as a way to reduce their energy costs. And then lastly, I know we're going to be presenting. One of the things we did with respect to our interest rate buy downs was offered it for geothermal, as Ralph was indicating. For those systems, we subsidized metering on the systems to see the energy consumption and other MMBTU energy savings benefits from those systems. I think, what was it, Ralph? I think we've got 20 installed systems or thereabouts that have a year's worth of data. So we're going to be sharing that information with the DEEP team, and I suspect Ron, Steve, Larry will want to have our contractor do the same with you. He's got data on, I think, down to the hour consumption level, maybe 15-minute intervals. So if we want to see how much these ground source heat pumps are pulling in terms of electricity during peak periods, that would be an interesting analysis, Shubhita, as we think about the additional load that ground source heat pumps might create for the system. So we can see it by degree days throughout the year. So some really interesting questions, but the DEEP team's going to get that, I think, next week, if I'm not mistaken. But we're going to no longer subsidize those meters, because I think we'll end up having about 30 systems with meters on them over a 5-year period. So we'll be able to see how ground source heat pumps are doing in general.
Question on that, Brian or others. For the ground source heat pumps, is that maximum loan amount $25,000 as well? Would those fall under the Smart E product?
The maximum loan amount is $40,000.
$40,000. Okay, thank you. I was just going to say, because my sense is that probably would not cover the full cost for many of those systems. 40, is your sense that 40 is sufficient for those?
It'll cover a majority of the, obviously it depends on scale. You can easily see $100,000 geothermal project too. But for I think your average consumer cover most, and then coupled with the upcoming rebates, I think you should see it coverage.
Why don't we, Ralph, Madeline, in this analysis of air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, do the average, on ground source heat pumps, there's not that many data sets. So we could just do a table showing the installed costs, maybe the tonnage. To Brenda's question earlier, we can get an average installed cost per ton. And then on air source heat pumps, I don't know if we have that tonnage data for the projects that we've helped finance, but it would be interesting to see the installed costs per ton to get to Ron's question on the rebate too. So let's just kind of put our heads together on some of that data.
If you have that, that would be fantastic. That actually is a data point that I know DEEP has been looking for, installed costs for the heat pumps, as we try to figure out how to stack the incentives from the existing offers plus the IRA funding coming in, and having Connecticut specific installed costs would be really helpful for that exercise on our part.
Yeah, yeah, Brian. Just to add to what was just said there, it would be interesting to see how many units were installed in addition to the tonnage, because I think you'll find that that's a large driver of the expense. If they go over a certain, may require 2 units to be installed in order to heat and cool a home.
Cool. Yeah, I'm not sure what data we collect, but Ralph, if you want to just coordinate there with Richard and Ron, data,
no problem.
Let's go ahead and pull it. The other one I would suggest too, because I think we pull it, is income data, so we can see the difference in income on that gap.
So we don't have income specifically tied to the borrower. We don't receive that from our lender, but we do have the area median income percentage in the census tracts. So we'll have to do some kind of data manipulation for that one.
Let's start with that. That's fine. The location. Yeah.
Okay. No problem.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Let's go on. Thank you for that. Any other questions on single family, multifamily? We covered a bit in the other healthy homes discussion.
Yeah, just one, Brian, if I would, given I think this is probably relevant here. And Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that in a previous res committee meeting from the board, the question came up about financing available for 1 to 4 unit projects, and whether what's available now. That was sort of, you know, the genesis of my earlier question about looking at the gaps and whether we really got everything covered. Actually, it was 2 to 4 unit. And is there something available, and are we able to serve that multifamily class?
And do you mean property, income properties, like rental units?
Probably primarily income properties, yes.
Yeah, so Capital for Change offers a landlord loan where the measures look very, very similar to the Smart E loan. The underwriting is just a little different, and the terms I think are a little different, but it is similar technology to serve that audience.
In Madeline, can you just clarify, does that have to be owner occupied, or can that be
So that one is, yes, Smarty is owner occupied. So 1 to 4 units, as long as one of those units is occupied by the owner, could be the whole building could be financed. For Capital for Change, their landlord loan, it can be a rental property only, and not occupied by the owner.
All right, thanks.
That's great. Okay, thank you. That was good information. But that was something that had been identified earlier. So it's good to know there is a product out there. Thank you.
Cool. All right, so we're coming down the line here. I think this is our last agenda item. So I just wanted to do an update on the shared clean energy facilities conversation that we had at the last board meeting, which was really robust. If you weren't there, you should listen to it. We had a really almost an hour-long conversation on it. I think the takeaway from that was, yes, submit to PURA that we would be interested in opening a dialogue around how to use subscriber savings, the present value of subscriber savings, as proceeds to help finance more energy efficiency today. So following that meeting, I worked with Isabel to summarize the concept and that meeting. And then we submitted a filing, the Green Bank filed with PURA that memo, which is part of the board packet for today, along with red line revisions to the SCEF program guidelines that would enable the ability for a subscriber to assign their subscriber savings to a third party, that then proceeds could be provided up front to then finance energy efficiency. So all of that filing was done. PURA has a schedule and written comments due on September 30th. I'll have to connect with my team on the September 30th date. I think there is a question in that written comments that has to do with, you know, the objectives that PURA has laid out for SCEF and whether or not anybody has any comments on the current SCEF design to those objectives. So to me, that is the opening that PURA is asking public stakeholders for on whether or not that proposal, we should submit that proposal. So I think I'll take a look at that again with our legal team, and if that's the opening, just submit a simple thing there like per our filing on such and such date, consideration should be given to this by open technical meeting, something along those lines. It'll be a simple comment. But for those of you who are interested in SCEF, take a look at that time schedule that's noted there. Still to be determined whether or not that proposed concept sees the light of day, but we've put it out there, which was the intent.
That's excellent, Brian. I'm hoping that it does advance.
You could imagine if it does in the context of the federal stuff.
Yes.
It's going to close that gap immediately.
It would be the supersized version of bundles. All right. So we are actually a little over, about a minute over. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thanks for everyone's contribution today.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye now.